You are now in a Joy and Fear video, and I'm here ready to fold the knight from Hollow Knight. The folding process is pretty interesting, and I guess confusing for some, but the final results are well worth it in the end. So stay tuned for the finished model at the end of this video. Intro aside, welcome to the video where we'll be folding Hollow Knight here, and to get started we'll basically start off with a pretty familiar base for those who might have done origami for a while, the kite base like so, and this is to start getting the tip, or at least the flap for the sword, which will obviously come at the very corner of the paper. Now, unlike previous origami models I might have done in the past, this one does not have a lot of pre-creasing going on, so we're not going to worry about a lot of pre-creasing as I find it's better to be able to fold. You're able to just fold the model straight on with references here and there that are already featured without having to pre-crease, of course, if that makes sense. On the top left corner you will, or not top left, but the top right corner, you will find one of my previous folds of Hollow Knights that I shared as a post on YouTube, in case you're wondering. As always, my models are usually there just to be sure, just to check my alignment with where I'm folding when trying to record this, of course. So these creases though are creating the flaps for the horns on the knight's helmet. Nothing tricky about that, of course, just straightforward like so. So now right here, we'll start collapsing right away, just like I said. Now notice how you go those lines from the horn flap to the sword flap, just aligned it like so. I need to be sure I need to extend this crease, by the way. But like so, just right along it. I will apologize, when I did collapse this model, I kind of went back and forth with a few things when I was recording. So just kind of watch the whole thing first before you actually start folding this whole thing, I suggest. So that way you're not accidentally making mistakes on your first try. But you'll see that we'll basically we'll do a dot-to-dot connection right here with some of the creases like so. There's one point there, and then basically at the tip of that triangle around where the head flap will be is how you want to line along. So just a heads up, this part of the collapse I had a little bit of a struggle trying to get this to align properly, at least for the knight's body with the legs flaps. In previous folds, this didn't align properly like so. There's so many weird stuff I did in the past where the feet wouldn't like align, but then I was just doing different weird alignment stuff. This time I did do it proper, but like I said, it was kind of difficult at first, and definitely the pressure of recording kind of applies to this, but at least I was pretty much calm the whole way, because you'll notice how the one corner edge, the edge on the right part of the paper right now needs to line along as well. But I think eventually here, well, you'll see how I figure it out. I hope you're all doing okay. This is the first origami video to be released under Joy and Fear instead of my original Paper Curb channel that of course I had for a long time, that I think some of you viewers, at least who were subscribed to me from that channel, would probably be familiar with. Yes, so this is where I fixed the issue. So you're not supposed to ride along with the triangle flap that you see, because you'll notice the weird angle sort of thing right there. Man, it's tricky to commentate over this part. But anything I want to show post-production wise, I could totally do that, but I think most of it is actually straightforward. It was just me kind of trying to figure out how to do this part properly. What I'm definitely blessed with this design is that it definitely appeared way more polished than the other designs like so. And this is basically the fourth fold of Hollow Knight. I think the same amount as folds as my Origami Knight Kirby. And I did kind of a similar thing. Well, okay, but this is actually the first time, or no, not the first time, but this is actually the second time trying to record folding footage of Hollow Knight. Not Hollow Knight, the Knights here. Hollow Knight is the final boss of the game. But this is the second recorded footage of trying to do the Knights here, because a previous folding attempt ended up getting the paper ripped at the one edge, which I was pretty frustrated about afterwards. So I decided to refold again, and I have no regrets trying to re-record all of this again. Well, thankfully, it wasn't too far deep into the folding process, I should mention. So at least it wasn't that bad. But at least I came clean in the end with the whole model like so. Anyway, so the whole folding process here, so you'll see that the result from all that I've done is basically this rectangle sort of shape here with all of these lines and all of these flaps, well, specifically pleats here. They're gonna help with the details in the future. Previous designs of the Knight had way more pleats that made it, when you collapse the model, that made it a lot more annoying, especially when trying to detail the head at first. And especially made certain parts a little bit thick, which parts especially around parts around the Knight's right shoulder did end up getting a little bit thick when trying to detail the design. So just be careful at least, and at least I was able to be careful when folding the Knight here, like so. So we're getting pretty much closer to actually detailing the model. I mean, this design didn't take too long. It took me about half an hour to fold this design. Because really, it's the final details that definitely take up the most time. I've already said that in the past, so I'm not going to repeat like so. I was going to try to open sync here, but ended up abandoning the process because I realized I realized it would be super complex to try to open sync it when I sort of figure I don't need to. I could just kind of deal with the thickness on the right shoulder at first. Also, my mistake, the Knight wields a sword with his left hand. All the attempts I folded, I was trying to fold from his right, make him right-handed instead. Him or her, I don't know. I'll just say him because whatever. And I didn't notice this because, I mean, I'm surprised I didn't notice that Hollow Knight was left-handed, just like the original Link from The Legend of Zelda, pretty much. We're getting like a little pleat flap there for basically Hollow Knight's chin, of course. And there's a lot of inside reversals of swivel folds. So a lot of the techniques for folding the knights here, they don't really use a lot of sort of, you know, open sinks or any sort of techniques like that. A lot of it is, surprisingly, it's just a lot of pretty standard folds with inside reverse folds and things like that. And I really loved how my accomplishment with Hollow Knight here is to be able to have just a simple fold straight like that. Well, I guess it's kind of too much for me to call it simple. It's not a simple design by all means. It's still a complex design, especially where the whole collapsing sequence is kind of weird. But I guess it's not as hard just because the whole sequence doesn't take as long. By the way, right here we are going to start to form the flaps for the legs or feet, legs, feet, whatever. And we'll kind of get them like this here. Yeah, I really love this design. It ends up being much more one of my more, at least the process for folding Hollow Knight, I'd say is a lot more freestyled rather than a specific crease pattern with specific things you need to collapse for the base. Like, it's not really like that. Every folding attempt I have of Hollow Knight always seemed very different, but up until now, I think this is my favorite way of folding Hollow Knight at this point that I praise for consistency, and it gets all the flaps. It especially gets all the hand flaps too. Previous Hollow Knight designs that I had didn't really have the hand show. Originally, I was gonna just hide the hands, but with this design, it ended up working out, which I think is pretty cool, just to have it all there. I really love how the cloak ended up turning out. Just, you could totally see how it kind of shapes up like this. I was super happy. I think the cloak part, along with how I get the head, is probably my favorite part of the design. Like, it is probably one of my favorites origami models I've made in a long time. My other favorite origami models I've folded before, I really like Origami Link and Origami Meta Knight. I think both of those designs have some really interesting folding patterns, and the details on them are just amazing. I think this definitely took years to get folding, and definitely the years of folding origami especially impacted how I treat other art styles like music and digital arts and video editing, just things like that, with just the delicacy, the authenticity, just really fun things like that. So you'll see the feet are starting to form like this, although eventually I switched up where you hide that, well, I'm not going to mention it right now, but I change up the feet in the near future when detailing. Yeah, so you could basically at this point really begin to see all the flaps begin to form from Hollow Knight here. You get the cloak going on, you see the sword, of course. You don't see the other hand yet, but it's going to be a middle flap. Middle flap as in basically being in the middle of the paper instead of being on the edge of the paper or the corner. Just so you know. Yes, like this, so the sword side was a little bit finicky because I kept mentioning that this part, oh, come on, please show me the footage, come on, thank you. This part was, the right shoulder around the knight gets pretty thick at this part. But playing around a little bit, eventually I was able to work around, such as just pulling the sword flap out a little bit and other things. I was just trying to get the same similar fold part, just like the left hand side, which again, the sword should have been there, but that's okay. So at this point, the details that you do for Hollow Knight is all up to you. What I ended up doing to especially get the sword flap folded out was to do an inside reverse fold. Something like this. I might have changed up a few things in the future when detailing, but I still got it to work out. Yeah, folding off camera, I mean, it's probably just because of the angle of my Logitech Pro cam. Like, the angle of it kind of makes it... I have to be pretty careful with not trying to do that. I kind of sent another YouTube post where I showed my setup for trying to fold, well, how I record footage like this, and it's not pretty, I should say, where I have to like use a clipboard and just have the wire to hold the 4K webcam over this. This isn't 4K, by the way, just so you know, just so it doesn't lag. But it can record to 4K if I have the ability at some points. Yeah, so we're starting to get the head flaps. So the head flaps are pretty cool with how I get them. And I definitely wanted to do the eyes this way, where you have this 3D crimp going on, where you'll get to the horns, at least start to form them like this. You do a little inside reverse fold here. Well, of course, I set up with a valley fold here to set up. Yeah, at least, thankfully, you still get all the footage. I remember I had an issue on my older origami videos. I think it was my original Origami Mario video where I was doing a lot of off-camera folding and it didn't look good. I had to redo it, especially where people were suggesting that, oh, please redo it. So yeah, I could revisit that at some point, but I don't know. Yeah, so you'll see with the eyes, you use those parts, you push them in. This part can be a little bit tricky in a sense of getting the eyes to look like, well, at least for the helmets, visors. To get the visors to look like the knight, you gotta kind of keep them pretty round. Pretty much oval shaped is what I suggest, especially where if you see the pictures of Hollow Knight, his eyes are like that. Now they're not exactly going to be exact, but it's going to be very close, and pretty much it's going to be very noticeable that it's Hollow Knight. I mean, right now this looks like an origami Batman with a really big head. Although I will do the details for the horns like this. It's kind of tricky with the horns sometimes, where you don't want to make them too short, especially when you have to pull the corners in like this, because those are how the details are for Hollow Knight. So I basically have to kind of fold the back part of Hollow Knight's head a little bit, just to make the horns a little bit longer, which still ends up looking good afterwards. So yeah, so you'll have to play around with this, and like, so the details are pretty tricky for Hollow Knight, in the fact where you have to get it right, or else it just might not look as good as you wanted to. Because I kind of played around with the eyes here and there, but at least it's okay. I mean, you see any pictures on Google Image of Hollow Knight, and you'll notice just the proportions on Hollow Knight are not that consistent, surprisingly. It's just a main matter of just having the noticeable helmet design for the knight. Just things like that. And I tried to round the corners of his mask here. Yeah, look at that. I'm surprised at how much that really looks like Hollow Knight from that view. Yeah, you could even, yeah, like, even this could, like, the finished design if you want to. Because this looks super cool. Like, I guess I wanted to raise the sword up like that, and that would look cool. But I ended up lowering the sword down so I could actually make Hollow Knight, so I can make the knight stand properly. Without having to do, like, make a custom origami stand for the knight to stand up. So it's nice to be able to do that. Though trying to get the balance of the knight properly was kind of tricky. Yeah, so again, just kind of messing around with the head. Trying to make the eyes a lot more oval shaped, just instead of like very circular. I'm seriously looking at this. Hollow Knight, or I guess any characters from Hollow Knight, are gonna look super cool in origami. They're totally meant to translate into that universe of paper folding, especially in this style. I really appreciated, like I said, just avoiding any sort of complex sort of styles of box pleating or bird-based system stuff. I just kind of, I mean, literally, I just jump right into it and just do this. It feels like I wanted to be able to fold the knight as if I were doing, you know, trying to make something with clay, or, you know, maybe as a kid, Play-Doh, for old time's sakes to mention. Again, I keep messing with the eyes every single time. I think I was mainly trying to get the eyes to be very visible, like try to pinch them a little bit so you can notice them a lot better. So just always messing around with that. And you could definitely do the head last if that's easier. I don't know, usually I try to do the head first in a lot of my designs, and then I kind of work on other proportions, because the head is always the most important part. I want to be sure I confirmed that I'm getting it right. So now we are going to move on to the sword, and yeah, you can totally see how I just want to be able to lower the sword down a little bit at some point, and I wanted to avoid I didn't want to do too much certain folds that would shorten the sword a little bit. I definitely want to try to be try to get the maximum length as much as possible, while also getting the details to show his hand, of course, that holds the sword. I'll pretty much widen the sword like this. You'll see how I get the hand like so. Just triangle like that. Yeah, we'll kind of pinch the edges of the sword, just make it a lot more sharper looking. Just things like that. Like, I could totally do way more folds of Hollow Knight, or at least characters from Hollow Knight. Because yeah, looking at this, they just, unlike other designs where it's just kind of like, yeah, you're just straight up translating, like certain characters from certain, you know, games or movies, whatever, are definitely gonna have some weird translations to come into origami, or at least some translate into origami better than others. Anything from Hollow Knight just looks super good, just noticing from this. Like, I could totally imagine actually doing Hollow Knight along with them. The one other character, I can't remember her name. I could definitely do those characters in the future, though maybe not exactly now, because I have so much videos I want to do I mean, I'm trying to make my Kirby alternative universe series. Kirby to Oblivion, of course, so I'm always busy along with other things, but I'm not going to get too personal to that. Just look forward to some fun stuff, okay? I've always been really good about doing just the clothing details on origami models. I almost wrecked the head there. Sorry. And definitely one of my solutions to make clothing designs is to kind of fold the flaps, fold all of the corners up a little bit. And I'll do that at the very end, but it looks really neat afterwards. So you'll start to see the left hand, which is again supposed to hold the sword, but don't blame me, I didn't know, I was just going along. But I really liked how I positioned the hand like that. You could definitely put the hand flap. I mean, the details are so up to your favor of what you'll prefer. Sometimes you can just hide the left hand. You can hide the other hand that's not holding the sword if you want to. Like, if you're good enough, the sky's the limit for what you want to do for a design. Originally, I tried to make the left side of the knight's cloak to be a lot longer than the other side, which I ended up not doing in the end. Maybe it would have been kind of a cool signature thing on this design. You could do that, but there's a reason why I didn't do that. Just so I could because, I don't know, you'll see in the future. It's complicated to explain right now. Definitely unlike the origami knight Kirby. By the way, both my designs in recent times have revolved around being a knight. Pretty fantasied right now. Anyways, unlike Origami Knight's Kirby, where I was kind of feeling a little bit stingy about the details and certain things, and just the more time-consuming proportion of trying to get the details, I didn't really feel like that when doing the Knight here. I think just because I kind of got a lot better at just telling myself when to stop. Yeah, look at that start to come together. And yeah, so I realized the cloak design I was starting to have less flaps for the cloak on the left-hand side compared to the right-hand side. But I noticed the corner flap. I realized, oh, I could just kind of do this sort of SI reverse fold thing, and kind of gives it an extra flap for the left-hand side too, which is kind of a total upper ground. But yeah. And like so, I shall give you the full footage right here of the Hollow Knight, or sorry, not the Hollow Knight, the Knights here. I keep getting them mixed up because when you see the title for Hollow Knight, you think that the main character is Hollow Knight, which he's not. I Google searched ahead of time before this that he's just referred to as the Knight, to put it simply. Very original. Yeah, so I think I was trying to make the right hand a little bit longer for the sword. Just trying to fix that part up a little bit. You guys loving this? You love seeing how you could turn a square sheet of printer paper into some really cool video game characters? I'll keep doing that. Maybe as long as it doesn't as long as it doesn't always keep taking way too long. Because every video I make takes way too long now to make. Yeah, so I made the hand flap a little bit better there. We could talk about a few things now that we're kind of at a much more of a cruise control sort of part. By the way, so again with proportion wise, unlike the original The Knight footages you see, he ended up being a little bit taller than his original his original, because the Knight is actually supposed to be a little bit shorter. The design I have here of him is actually much taller. Oh, so very quick, so this is how I get the little texture creases on the sword that I kind of want to keep doing a little bit more often with some stuff, but I do these very little pleats on the sword, and then you unfold them as you try to straighten it. That's where you could get little textures on the sword. I didn't want to add too much creases, but it gets the little lines that you see on the Hollow Knight sword, at least the first sword they get in the game. I think. I didn't get too far into Hollow Knight. I don't know if I guess there's sword upgrades, right? That you eventually get. I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm not gonna try to get it wrong on that note. So the posing for the posing for the Knight is definitely this sort of walking pose with his right sword facing down like that, and his left hand just sort of just poking forward a little bit, just like that sort of walking pose. This is exactly what I went for. I really love how heavy or not heavy, but thick a lot of the cloak flaps end up being. It just looks super good. Yeah, so this is what I was mentioning earlier, how I changed the feet a little bit. It's nothing too huge, but it was just to hide that certain triangle flap right behind. I ended up preferring this way, just because it just frees up the legs flaps a lot more, which I always like that with origami designs. I hate it when the certain flaps become way too locked, like you're limited to where you can angle, the arms, so to say, because otherwise the arm flaps, I don't know, it's I've had stuff like that in the past where I really prefer make the flaps longer than they need to sometimes, just so you just get a lot of freedom with how you want to pose the character. So it always sucks when I can't do that. Like, they have to be in this specific pose all the time, or else any other pose, the legs are gonna look too short, for example. So thankfully this was definitely not the case. I mean, the legs could be shorter, because that's how, when I saw pictures of the Knights, that's kind of the way how I mostly saw him as, but I don't know. I just really liked having a taller version of the Knights, I guess. It just looks really good to me that way. Yeah, I am so happy with how the details for the Knight ended up turning out. So just like that, so we're about to wrap things up for this origami design here, so I guess I'll say this. Thanks for stopping by, at least in a Joy and Fear video of some spectacular origami folding. Maybe you could do a more spectacular job, I guess. But who needs comparisons? It's your taste, and that's the fun beauty of art. Just go with it, do as much as you can before you die. Okay, don't need to get heavy there. But anyways, I think we are done now. Bye-bye.